Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Business Spotlight, the show that allows entrepreneurs and business owners to promote their products and services. I'm your host, Martinique Brown, and today on the show I have Allie, the conversation starter that focuses on dismantling racism one conversation at a time. Before we get started, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, if we're not friends on Facebook, make sure that you go ahead and send me a friend request so you can always be notified of when I post new shows and have guests on the show as well. If you're interested in promoting your product or service on the show, just send me a message on Facebook and we can make that happen. So without further ado, thank you so much, Allie, for being on the show.
Thank you, Martinique, for having me.
You are welcome. So, guys, don't forget, if you have any questions, make sure you go ahead and type your question in, and then I'll just ask Allie that question. So, Allie, this is going to be such a good talk today because I've never met anyone like you that strictly focuses on dismantling racism. And we know that is just such a prevalent topic. It's been a topic throughout the years, but I just feel like it's just so heightened right now. If you can just let our viewers know what a social change activist is.
Okay, so I'm an activist. I actually officially, the term is called social entrepreneur. But what I decided to do, because I'm an activist, I decided to change it and add change in the midst of that phrase, because a social entrepreneur actually focuses on solving problems like world hunger, poverty, climate change, social justice. And I focus solely on racism. And and activists, that's what we focus on, is dismantling racism, or at least fighting it. And so I decided to, since that is basically I hate to say niche, but it's my niche, what I developed my business for, I decided that social entrepreneur really did not define or explain who I was. And so in order to define myself better, I decided to kind of change it to social change entrepreneur.
Okay.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So how did you even get interested in this type of activism?
Well, in the African American community, as well as, of course, in other melanated communities, racism, unfortunately, is one of those things that has become a norm in this nation for the last 400 years. And I had already decided that I had wanted to try and figure out how to do my part in the community and in society in that regards of fighting it. And so what really opened up the door for me to be able to do that was when the Rodney King beatings occurred. That kind of made me change my, excuse me for saying I'll do it again. That incident is what really woke me up, because initially when I was in college, I wanted to go into communications because I wanted to be a DJ. But when Rodney King got beat, and I don't know if you remember, I know you remember, it really went viral, at least on TV and media. And I remember thinking, one of the things that we're lacking in society is education. And so I decided to do my role by changing my major and then becoming a teacher, because I felt like education, it really began at the lower levels. So I decided, because history is my first love, my first passion, to become a history teacher.
Oh, okay.
And so through my journey of change, of becoming an educator, and then becoming a history teacher, I use that platform in order to be able to teach world history the way it's supposed to be taught.
That's good.
And then, of course, when President Obama became president, and then, of course, we know racism never went away, but it was just interesting to see the vitriolic language that was and the imagery in regards to just President Obama and then the First Lady, and how she was of how they started to dehumanize her as this this very, very powerful woman is becoming dehumanized in our nation, of one of the most powerful nations in the world. Mm-hmm. And then I recognized, what my purpose was, which, by the way, I've been running from for a very, very long time. Education had made me very comfortable, and I was comfortable in that platform with my students because I love them. And I had been running away from what my purpose was, which was to fight racism and to fight for those who can't fight for themselves or have a voice or know how to use their voice. And so with the election of President Obama, his last term, I'm seeing all these things, and I recognized it was time for me to step out of myself and to give back, the best way that I could. And so I jumped on in head first into activism. I stepped it up a notch. And then, of course, I decided to create. Now, what I did was I created a group called the Conversation Starters first. And that is a group that we still exist. And monthly, we have monthly forums on having raw and honest conversations on race and dismantling racism. And then from there came my business.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask you, what city and state are you located in?
I'm in Maryland. And so right now I relocated from St. Mary's County, the very southern part of Maryland, to the state capital, which is Annapolis.
So if somebody wanted to come to one of your conversations, is it open to the public?
Absolutely. There are different formats in which they can access my business because it comes in different forms. I have an umbrella of specific different things that I do. And one of those is having public conversations. And so anyone is invited when those conversations are held.
So since we're talking about your company, can you tell us what services you actually offer?
Okay. I provide conversations privately as well as public. I do online and face-to-face conversations, especially, and I really love the online because that allows me to get outside of the state of Maryland. And so if you're in Seattle, you're in Colorado, you're in Britain, you're in Ghana, wherever you are around the globe and you want to have a conversation, especially an intimate one, you can reach me through that forum. Or if you want to include family members or friends or those individuals who you feel intimately comfortable with having the conversation, you can get me online. I also do corporate packages for businesses. And then I also do public speaking and workshops.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. So I know with that, can you just explain to individuals why you have on that makeup?
This is the makeup of, if you're a melanated of African ancestry, as well as from the African diaspora. This is a part of our history that was basically taken away when Africans were, and I will say this because my business focused on raw and honesty. My ancestors were kidnapped. They were by force enlarged, taken by force, whole communities, whole ethnic groups, and forced into a position of servitude. And along with that came the stripping away of humanity, as well as culture, identity, as well as spirituality. And so in my journey of relearning who I am as a product of the African diaspora, it is also a reclaiming of what was taken away. And so the makeup is a part of that. It is sacred. And I have had individuals who want to know what that means. And I can't tell them because it was something in it. It still is something that is sacred and it does have specific meaning. And it took me a very long time. And I'm still learning what the makeup means in regards to even who I am as a product of the diaspora. Because if you know anything about the Middle Passage, the triangle trade, which those are the things I get into during conversations, if those things need to be talked about in order to understand racism, the average African American has a minimum of 3 different ethnic ethnic groups off the continent of Africa. Because one of the things that they start doing in order to stop enslaved Africans from rebelling, because they start having very successful rebellions, is they start taking different Africans from different regions and they start putting them on those ships together so that they cannot communicate. And so a lot of us have different, ethnic groups. And so that has been a journey in itself, is because learning, where ships docked, where different groups came from, who went to South Carolina, who from Angola went to Virginia, went to Maryland. It's interesting. And so that is the meaning of, that is the meaning. And the colors have significance too. So there is a meaning to the colors. There is a meaning to the patterns on one's face when they do put the ancestral makeup on their faces. And every ethnic group in wherever region they are, it all means something different.
Yeah. So can you help people have a better understanding of what your sessions actually look like?
Okay, so that was the one thing that I have been struggling with. Answering for a very long time, because it's about protection of my intellectual property and about the formatting of what occurs. What I can say is that what tends to take place is that I have the participants set up in a particular way. Think UN, United Nations. Okay. If I can give you a clue, the United Nations format, so that individuals are placed in a placement, I know that's redundant, of equitability and respect, so that no one is at the front or at the head. Everybody is there with an equal voice, equal participation, equal leadership. Because in that space, in that platform, everybody is a leader. Everybody has the ability to either participate or not, to listen, to share, to conversate.
That's good.
Yeah, and so, yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Well, I was about to just say that we have a couple of people that just tuned in. So I would love for you guys to go ahead. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask your questions. Also, make sure that you go ahead and share this video. We know a lot of people that, make racist comments. So go ahead and share this to their page right now, just as a subtle suggestion. Maybe they need to contact Allie. Maybe they can actually learn something from this. But I just really do appreciate you guys for tuning in. And I really thank you, Allie, for just being transparent and open with us as well. So how do you make, or do you even try to make, individuals of different ethnicities comfortable with the open dialogue that you all have?
Well, now that you mention it, I tell everyone at the very beginning, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because there is nothing comfortable about the conversation of race. That is why everybody runs from it. And that, realistically speaking, you should not be comfortable throughout having the conversation of race. It is very insidious. It is very hurtful. It is very painful. It is humanity's cancer. I always say it's humanity's cancer. And in the end, we are the answer to it. We are the ones that can heal it. But at the same time, we cannot think that if we do not touch upon those things that make the conversation contentious, that if we bypass it, everything's going to be okay. Because all that's going to do is fuel anger. It's going to have people to keep emotions repressed. And we all know what happens when individuals do that. People hold things in for so long, and then of course you have this big explosion. And so in honesty, there is no such thing as having a comfortable conversation on race. If you are having a consistent conversation on race, and there are no hard feelings, and there are no feelings of integrity being questioned, feelings of shame, feelings of guilt, laughter, joy, anger, frustration, you're not having the right conversation. Because because the beginnings and the origins of this nation in itself was formed off of brutality and racism. And so you cannot create something that began with ugliness, pain, rape, pillaging, genocide, the kidnapping of a people, a displacement of two different peoples, and then think you're going to have a comfortable conversation on race, especially in a nation as well as in other places globally that have refused to actually address it intentionally and purposefully in a way into which the whole society can heal. Because we are still a nation that we still have entities and pockets of our society, personally, as the United States of a nation, who still think that racism does not exist and that everything is okay, and that when people do speak about race, they're race baiting. No, if I'm telling you my story, or if I'm sharing to you the story of somebody else who is experiencing something that is painful and hurtful, and it has to do with racism, that's not race baiting. That's me trying to make you aware so that I can make the pain go away, or so that we as a community or nation can figure out, what do we do to heal this? How do we make this better? Because in the end, we're all in this together. And what's happening now is we have other people who are coming into our nation who don't understand the complexities of racism. Mm-hmm. And either they are perpetuating the racism, or that racism is being perpetuated against them and they don't understand why.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So now we actually have a comment that's on the table. Tracy Tate Jones, she's actually an author, and she's going to be on the show next. Hey, Tracy. But her comment is, let me see if you can actually see this, but I'm going to read her comment as well.
Okay.
So her comment is, I think race plays a huge role in corporate promotions, especially Black and female. What are your thoughts about that?
I totally agree. I totally agree. Either, and this has happened to people in my family, either we are the teachers to people who get promoted above us, even though we're more qualified or we've been there, or we become the token, whereas they can check off the box. And in the end, regardless, we are still being used as tools. And in the end, we're still being hurt. In the end, we are still in a place to whereas we are in a system that is not nice and kind to us. And usually we're in those places and those forms by ourselves. And we are trying to toe the line, do our best, do our jobs, while at the same time trying to not be the quote unquote angry Black woman. Or we are trying to prove that we are just as good as anybody else, if not better. And so I think that the corporate world puts us in this place of intersectionality, which sometimes I have, that term sometimes I have problems with, but I am starting to understand its meaning. Out of all races, I think African Americans and Native American women are in this place of intersectionality, to whereas we feel everybody's pain, and then we feel our own pain in regards to being melanated women. And
what does that mean? What does intersectionality mean?
I'm still learning about that term, and I will say it's my own fault. I'm still learning about it because once I heard about it, I disagreed with it and I didn't like it. But I find truth to it. Is that intersectionality tends to mean that we are that group that feels what Black African American men go through, Native American men go through, the LGBT community goes through. Like we are that centerpiece that we're experiencing what everybody else is experiencing, but then also too, we're experiencing our own trials and tribulations of what it means to be melanated in this community that other people don't experience, if that makes sense. And I would probably really encourage your listeners and your followers to do more research on it, because I need to also too, because even though I am a social change entrepreneur, I focus on certain aspects of things, and there are other things I hear, and then I kind of I really don't get vested in it as maybe I should. And now that you've asked it, I really do, because I hear this term all the time. And even though sometimes I have issues with it, I still should know realistically what it means. So when people do ask me, because I know what it means, but I don't know how to. I'm not good at very explaining it, if that makes sense. Believe it or not. I always tell my students, the teachers, we're human. We don't know everything. Yeah. We hear things, we use it, but it doesn't mean we really know how to explain it. And so, yeah, ashe, Tracy, ashe. Yes.
So I know that with the corporations that you actually work with, if a business leader or an HR person is watching this episode, how would they know that they needed your workshop?
Okay, so a lot of times, well, here's the thing. We all know that if you have racial issues, incidences in your place of business, that you need to reach out to someone like me who does what I do. Mm-hmm. But realistically speaking, when it comes to me, you should be reaching out to me before you even get to that point. I created my business so that one could be proactive instead of reactive. I am that person you want to come to so that you can avoid risk mitigation. So, so when things start to occur, you already got things in place to be able to address it. You'll already know if what you're hearing falls under the umbrella of racism or not. So that conversations are being held, and before something really drastic and it becomes something that makes a business lose so much money, there's mediation, there's facilitation, there is growth and development that can be in place already, because I'll already be in place. Mm-hmm. Or you'll know if you need to bring other things in order to help alleviate what's going on. And so I am that. Realistically speaking, businesses should start operating from a place of proactivity. Mm-hmm. And so I always say, if you are calling me, which is good, because realistically speaking, if it's happening and you need to jump on it, definitely call me. But realistically speaking, you need me now. Yeah. You already need me. If you're having to question when you should bring me in, you need me. Yeah. You know what I mean? You need me. Realistically speaking, you shouldn't be questioning that. With the climate that's happening right now, you need me. Individuals need me in order to help them, for them to help themselves, how to understand racism, mm-hmm. or how to approach the subject in itself, or even when they're around it and they don't know what to do. And then businesses need me too, because they need someone who's not afraid to have difficult conversations and can weather the storm.
And that's good. Yeah. And you know what? The one thing that I was thinking about was, it's kind of like you don't want to, that person that works with somebody every single day doesn't want to be that one person to bring it up. And so that's why it would be good to have you come in, not to say like the bad person, but like,
yes.
Bring those tough questions. For individuals. How often do you feel is a good number for companies to bring you in?
Okay, I develop my business. I don't do trainings. I do workshops if needed, but I don't do trainings. I created my business in order to fill in the gaps for trainings. So after businesses or nonprofits or whatever, they decide that they've had their training and they want to go and take the conversation to a deeper level, and go deeper. A lot of times people say peel the onion. No, I'm talking about with racism, you got to go deep. You got to go to different levels in order to get to the core of the problem so that you can start addressing it. I am that person that companies and nonprofits and educational entities will actually bring in, because I will have conversations in a consistent manner. Usually trainings tend to occur maybe once or twice a year. Sometimes businesses don't even have people come in for trainings. What they do is they will have their trainings online. And so their workers will watch videos, and that will be their training. Well, after you have that, you need to be able, people have questions. Like, even what is racism? How do I know if I am being racist? How do I know if I'm witnessing something that is a racist act? I am that person that will have consistent conversations for individuals to be able to answer those questions. I have 3, 6, 12-month packages. And so therefore, those conversations are spread out to a degree to whereas it can be held in a consistent manner.
Right.
Yes.
And you know what? I think that that's really good that you did mention that. I'm kind of getting the echo.
I'm sorry.
But I know that you did mention that sometimes after the training, like maybe an HR manager might have their employees watch a video. And I think sometimes that we think that that's all the employees need. But, you know, I'm glad that you said that you offer your 3, 6, and 12-month packages, because I think that companies have to realize that these questions are going on, as well as they should make an investment into their employees as well, because I think one of their goals should be to help everyone,
yes,
regardless of their ethnicity or race or sexual preference, be comfortable in that 10-hour workplace that they are at.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So if you could just tell our viewers, what is the goal of your workshops?
The goal of conversations, workshops, speaking engagements, anything that I do, it is always to address that quote unquote elephant in the room, and to bring awareness and to help people to recognize that they have power in their voice too. And if not in their voice, at least in knowing and knowledge, and being able to recognize that there is somewhere they can go to or come to understand race. My business is really, like it says, just to start working at dismantling racism one conversation at a time. Because that is the 21st century tool that has not been utilized. And that is what does, I feel, separate my business from other entities, is I'm using the tool of conversation. And because most people don't want to have conversations on race. And when they do, they don't want raw and honest. And so I am offering that platform. I am offering those moments of educational aha moments. And if I can't give it to you, if nothing else, I can show you how to get there.
Yeah.
And so I think that is the one of the pieces that's been missing in this fight, I guess, because I don't know any term, because it is a fight, and I think sometimes we think a fight is a bad thing, but it doesn't have to be. As long as you're fighting for something good and you're fighting for justice and righteousness, equitability, for this nation to be what it says it is. I don't ever think there's anything wrong with that. And so my business is basically what it says, yeah.
And you know what? We actually had some more people begin to tune in. Make sure you guys go ahead and share this video now. Also, all of Allie's information, contact information is in the description box as well. Make sure that you utilize that. Make sure that you also support her by liking her Facebook page. One of the questions that I really have is, I feel that racism within an individual is expressed in a couple of different times. I feel like it's expressed when people are trying to be funny. I feel like it's expressed when you are just among your family members. And another time that I think is expressed is when you're angry.
Mm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
I think that when you're trying to be funny, you have a little bit more control over what you say before you say it.
Yes.
And I'm only speaking from experience because
Yes.
this is how I am.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm angry, it just comes out, you know,
Yes.
and I don't think before I speak.
Yes. Yes.
If this racism is within my heart,
Mm-hmm.
why do you feel that I can be changed as a racist?
Okay. One of the things,
Such a heavy question, sorry.
it is a heavy question, and I will say that, first of all, we can't change people. You know, I always say in my, when I am talking to individuals about my basis, that my goal is not to change. Mm-hmm. My goal is to make people aware and to educate. Realistically speaking, it is up to the individual whether or not they want to change. I will say that people have to make the decision to become intentional and purposeful about what role they're going to play in regards to racism. The goal and the hope is that people are going to be honest with themselves, because I always say when I have these conversations, be honest with yourself, because that's the first step. And honestly, if people don't realize, it's probably one of the hardest things that people can be. If you don't even think about racism, it's very hard for people, even amongst themselves, to say, I'm selfish. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I'm selfish. I'm greedy. I don't want to help people. So now imagine when it comes to racism. Most people do not want to admit to themselves, I'm a racist. I'm a bigot. I have implicit bias, which just is another way of saying I'm a racist. But I don't know I'm a racist, but it means you're still a racist. First, individuals have to be honest with themselves. And I always tell individuals, be honest with yourself. Nobody knows what's going on up in here. If you figure out you're a racist, you're a bigot, you discriminate a lot, you're prejudiced, nobody knows. You will have to deal with that within yourself. But that's the cool thing, even though it hurts and it's painful, the cool thing is that nobody knows. And then after you figure that out, that is when decisions have to be made. And that's why most people don't want to address whether or not they're racist or not, is because they do recognize that once I address I'm a racist or I'm a bigot, I got to make a decision. Am I going to change? Because realistically, you're supposed to shift your mindset or start working towards shifting your mindset. Mm-hmm. Or am I just going to accept it, forget it, and go on? And then, of course, that's another conversation for another time. But those are the things that people have to figure out and decide. Once they figure this out, then from there, they start working on themselves. And that's why I always say, then you can start working on yourself. Then you can be... Sorry, I had to tell my daughter I love her. but she's leaving. I was my baby. I'm a mom, y'all. I'm a mom first. But then they can start working, on themselves. My thing is that dealing with racism really is a personal journey for all of us here in this nation. Mm-hmm. For all of us, whether you're on the side where racism is perpetrated against you, or you are actually on the side to whereas you are the one perpetrating it, or you're witnessing it and you're a bystander. Mm-hmm. And in the end, we are going to have to figure out what we're going to do in regards to that. Are we going to deal with our own biases, our own prejudices? Our own racism, if you are a racist, and then what are you going to do with it? Mm-hmm. And I mean, and that really, I think for some people is a hard question. Let's be honest, and I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
because that's what my job is. My business is. Melanated communities don't have to question about, am I a racist? Because we're not racist. We can't be racist. We don't have the power to be racist. We are in the system that is being oppressed by racism. And yes, there are conversations about reverse racism, which I know we really can't get into here on this platform, but I would always tell people to really research what reverse racism means, research if it really exists, and then see where it stands on the legal aspect, because people have taken or have tried to go to court over reverse racism, and then they can look and see how many of those cases have actually been won in court. But that's not, melanated people have to deal with how racism affects them. The non-melanated community, they are the ones that have to really tackle those questions about whether or not they are racist or not. And that's why I created this platform, so that they can have someone to have those hard and difficult conversations with, without judgment. Because the one thing that I can say that I have really intentionally worked towards is trying to create a platform to where there is no judgment, even though judgment probably does occur, because that we're human and that's going to happen. But we still have to be in a place to where we can have these conversations honestly, cross-culturally, because my platforms are cross-cultural, or at least that's the intent for them to be cross-cultural. The only times, of course, individuals are going to be with me on a one-on-one basis is in regards to, of course, online face-to-face coaching. And then that's when they can just be just with me to have these very intimate and personal conversations. I hope I answered, because I just was I was really being a conversation starter and then finisher too.
Well, I do have a question, because one of the reasons why I created this show is just so I can gain more knowledge as well. So I know that you mentioned that African Americans or melanated people cannot be racist.
Yes.
Why would I not be called a racist if I showed racism towards a white person?
That's not racism, it's discrimination. And that's what we're falling into, is that it's interesting because let me say this. I know that when we were kids, and I don't know when you went to school, but I know when I was a kid, we heard the term racism, we heard the term bigot, but we really weren't, those terms were not explained to us. We weren't given those actual definitions. In this day and age, the actual definitions actually at times are really taught in the school system. They are taught on a lower level as well as, of course, a higher academic echelon. And so a lot of times people don't know the difference between bigot, prejudice, discrimination, racism, and all the other terms that go along with that. What separates prejudice from racism is that, yes, anybody can be prejudiced. You can have bias against somebody, and you can do things that show your prejudice. You can discriminate against that person because of who they are, whether it be on race, their skin color, their religious background, affiliation. But when it comes to racism, that's a whole nother ballgame. When it comes to racism, it means you have the power to affect somebody economically, socially, politically. Socially, politically, economically, academically. It's systematic. It means that a system has been put in place that can allow people growth, or it can hinder their growth in all aspects of their lives. And that's why racism is so insidious. And those are the things that I actually start to get into in regards to when dealing with racism and that topic, when the conversation does come up about racism. And those are some of the difficult conversations that are very hard for people to have. And believe it or not, it's just not non-melanated people that have problems hearing that. I always find it interesting too that melanated people have a hard time understanding and accepting that definition too. And I do recognize why, is because we've been given, we tend to hear the general it means because if you don't like somebody, that's, another color. That's what usually is told to us. But if you really actually look at the actual definition, and a lot of historical information is out there to support what I'm saying. A lot of academias have done all the things, if you look on the United Nations website page, they've got it, of what racism is, and they break it down, all the, what the different aspects of it are. And it basically tells you it's systemic, and it's, it's one group of people having power over another group of people and being able to institute that power over the people so that they can develop so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know that we were talking about you being the individual that companies bring into filling that gap. Can you be that first person that they bring in instead of the continual workshops that you offer?
Of course. I mean, I could always, I can have, what I call the conversation.
Okay.
So I can definitely always be that conversation starter. So that they can at least get a feel of my format, what to expect, how the conversations will flow, and that aspect of it. But I will say that, it's to each his own, but definitely they can bring me in. I will say, when I come in, boom, no, I'm kidding. Be expecting boom. But definitely I can always be brought in, first, as that introductory, I can definitely bring.
So you be the. So I feel like, if you was the first person to be the introductory, starter, employees would walk out like, I thought she just wanted to help us get our feet wet. She just came at it.
Yeah, I'm like, look at us. And I do and I don't pressure anybody or anything, but I know that my presence in itself is one of those things of like, oh gosh, what are we in for? But in the end, I always love, because in the end, I have had some conversations that have just been loving and awesome. And I remember thinking this was good, but I swear every time we were really about to get in the heart of stuff, it was time to cut it.
Yeah.
Like we had to stop. And I started to recognize why it is important to have them consistently, because when you have to stop, that means when you come back, the continuation. So wherever people left off, where they had that question, they had that feeling of, I didn't like that. I'm not feeling what they said. I don't understand it, but why does it have to be this way? Then you can continue on that conversation, and you can really start digging into those different levels of racism and the pain and the hurt, because you've got to go through the pain and the hurt to get to the reconciliation. And realistically speaking, honestly, this is something that we're going to be dealing with and working with for the next couple of generations. So it really is, I think, very, very important for us as a society and as a nation to really start working on it now, because we are a new nation. We're only a couple of 100 years old. And if we intend on continuing to keep this nation intact and in place, we are going to have to deal with one of the history teachers once said, our dirty laundry. We're going to have to really start to be intentional and purposeful in how we deal with this. And one of those key things is having the conversation, because you can't sit here and go out here and have these actions and have these rallies and go and try and work and dismantle racism at all these different levels, and you don't understand it. Because we have a lot of people out there that are doing that, especially in the nonprofit world. They're coming out into specific communities really with the intentions of helping. And they really want to help, but then they're going into specific communities with their own implicit biases. And sometimes they're more harmful than they are helpful. And that is because they don't understand racism. And one of the things that I've always said, and I heard it once said before, is that just because you're progressive does not mean you understand racism.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you work beside people who don't look like you, it does not mean you understand racism. Because at the end of the day, we all go back to our own respective corners, and we all get to live in our own world. And as a society, we isolate ourselves from whatever makes us uncomfortable, which of course is racism.
Mm-hmm.
And anything else that we feel is ugly and is going to shift and change the paradigm of how we think and how we live.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, Allie, I need you to listen to this question.
Uh-oh.
So I'm going to read it 2 times.
Okay.
So if a person recognizes, so your job is to fill in the blank.
Okay.
So if a
okay.
person, and you guys that's watching, you go ahead and you fill in your own blank and you make a comment of what your blank is.
Yeah. Do I need to write it down?
So you fill in the blank. You fill in the blank. If a person recognizes blank within themselves, they should give me a call for a one-on-one session. I'll read it again.
Okay.
If a person recognizes blank within themselves, they should give me a call for a one-on-one session.
Okay. I would say bear with me because this is not an easy question. It's an easy question, but it has many different, now I'm going to say layers.
Mm-hmm.
If a person does not believe that racism still exists, if a person feels uncomfortable when the topic of racism comes up, whether it be in the workforce, in their households, families, if a person did not go to Thanksgiving dinner with their family, or they did not go back home to spend Christmas with their family, especially when Donald Trump, our president, got elected, you need to call me. You need a one-on-one. If they do not understand why melanated people cannot get over it, you need to call me. If you have no one to talk about racism, and many people don't, and that's not just non-melanated, it's also melanated, or rather I can say it's not just people of color, it's also white people, because on both sides sometimes we do not have anybody to really vent with, to talk about racism with, to explore, to be able to say, this happened to me at work today. I don't understand why this person got upset, or this happened to me at work today and this person doesn't understand why I got upset. Because on both sides, we're having issues with how to understand the other person and why they think like they think. Mm-hmm. Call me. Yeah, you need to have a one-on-one, with me, and consistent. If they want to be, it's so that they can understand the other person's side.
Yeah.
If they have been a witness or a bystander to racism, you need to call me. Mm-hmm. If you've experienced racism, my thing is, if you just want to heal or understand the complexities, if you want to know what is this big deal about it, why do I have to go to a training about it? I don't understand why she got upset because I touched her hair. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's things like that. I've had individuals who they didn't understand why I wouldn't let them touch my hair. Mm-hmm. And I had to literally have a sit-down conversation. And I will say that on one side, and to be honest, because I've had my own personal journey, but one individual just didn't understand. But then I've had some very deep conversations where they were like, I just didn't know. If I had only known. Mm-hmm. I didn't know this. They didn't tell me this in school. I didn't learn this in school. What you're telling me about history and the significance of hair and what happened on the slave ships, nobody told me. I didn't learn this in school. And so I am that person that you want to come to.
That's good. Yeah. Well, Allie, I just thank you so much for coming on Business Spotlight with Martinique and really just helping us have a better understanding of how your workshops are, specifically what you focus on, and your target groups, because you don't discriminate against anybody. You focus you talk to individuals as well as corporations. So that's really good. You don't leave anybody out. So again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you, Allie, for being on the show. You are welcome. You are welcome. So guys, I know that one of the things that Allie was saying was, that you can really just like the whole transformation. She cannot change anyone, and we know that. We've heard that for the longest. She can't change anyone. I am a Christian. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and I believe that Jesus Christ is the only one that can transform your heart. I know that many a times I felt a certain way against somebody or individuals, and I gave it to God and said, God, help me. And it's really a process. And I had begun to see that I've changed when I saw that I no longer reacted the same way that I did in the past. And so I know that that's Jesus just changing my heart. I don't know if you guys are believers or not, but I do encourage you. I strongly encourage you to go ahead and ask Jesus who he is. Ask Jesus to reveal himself in your heart, so you can have a better understanding of who you are as an individual, why he created you, and how you can begin to love individuals that may not be like yourself. Or even we have a thing called self-hate. You can even begin to love people that look just like you. So I just want to thank you guys for tuning into the show. Make sure that you visit my description box so you can contact Allie, because this is anonymous. You don't have to let us know that you contacted her. Go ahead and visit her website as well so you can find out her telephone number. I didn't list her telephone number, but I did list her email address in the description box. Make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, make sure that you send me a friend request on Facebook. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a blessed day, everyone, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.